Hi, I'm Meredith Tharapos and I'm here at Coles Distribution Centre in Melbourne, and I'm talking to Josh and Mick. So Josh and Mick, could you introduce yourselves?
I'm Josh, head of Distribution Centre Operations for Vic and Tas, so I oversee our 4 DCs in Victoria and 2 in Tasmania.
I'm Mick, I'm DC Operations Manager, and I'm focused on people performance.
Thank you for that introduction, and now we're going to talk about budgets. So could I get you to tell me a little bit about how you use budgets to assist with the planning side of the operations here at the distribution centre?
Yep, so firstly, we're a distribution centre is a cost centre, so we're not a profit centre. So we do a lot of work to set our budget, and how we do that is at a site level from a DCM down. We work through with all our areas at the start of the year and determine, at what rate we can do each activity. Once we've agreed on that, that sets our budget for us. So once the budget's set, what we're basically saying is we've agreed that we can do things at a certain rate. Once that's locked in, that underpins all of our planning. So, as a practical example, if we believe that we can inbound pallets at 50 pallets per hour, we only put enough labour on each day to accommodate 50 pallets per hour. So it sort of sets all of our targets in all of our areas.
So that would be the variable cost component, and you would use that to inform how much, the scheduling of labour for the following day.
Yeah, that's correct. So we start with the budgeted rate, and then day to day and week to week we get a forecast of volume, and when we put those together, that will determine how many man hours we put out on the floor to perform that task.
Yeah, and then you would also have fixed costs. So what would be some examples of some of your fixed costs here at the distribution centre?
Well, the rent would probably be the big one. We're paying a lease on the building, and that would be the biggest fixed cost that we have.
And Josh, budgets, how would you use them?
So budgets, as Mick mentioned, being a cost centre, it's a large part of what we do. Having a budget that's out by 1% puts everyone in a really challenging position for the year, and so making sure we've got accurate budgets to work towards, and then it's a key part of managing performance, but also delivering the right outcomes to people. If we want to have the right safety culture on site, the right service levels to stores, we actually need to have enough budget to make sure we do that. So a big part of my job is to make sure that these teams have enough money to go and do their job properly and efficiently, and then any changes to the way we do business throughout the year, we're changing processes constantly and making sure that the guys are getting resourced to do that.
Yeah. So they're a big part of planning, in terms of and they ensure efficiency of operations as well. What about for decision-making purposes? Josh, what would be some of the ways that you would use budgets to inform the decision-making processes?
So it probably goes back to if we're going to look at doing something different, or someone within the business is looking at doing something different, we'll work through how much we think that will cost and then compare that to what our current budget is for that process. And if there's a cost increase, then there needs to be a funding to come to do that, or we'll have other parts of the business who work on efficiencies and come back and think, we've got a great idea, we're going to save you lots of money. Our job is to make sure that we go through that and validate it, because we're left with that at the end. That's how our budget will adjust. So it's a really important part of what are the ways that we're going to work moving forward. And we change processes consistently. This site went through a major transformation 12 months ago and moved a lot of its volume out to help with the growth into another distribution centre. Having that, from my view, at a state level, is making sure that from a cost perspective we can manage to do that, right, to give the right outcome. So.
And Mick, how about budgets in terms of the informing decision making in your daily activities?
Yeah, well, if I break it down, probably to a smaller chunk, area to area, we have managers out on the floor that have a certain area to manage and a certain team to manage, and they're aware of those budgets, and they help them make day-to-day decisions like hour to hour, whether they keep people in an area, move people to an area. It gives, particularly the managers, something to strive for. They know they've got a target to meet, challenges them to think a little bit differently about how they're doing things. because sometimes you set those budgets with certain things in mind, but we're a very fast-paced site and things change, and so then perhaps that budget's not as achievable as you once thought it was. So the managers then they'll focus on that number but look at different ways of doing things. So for this site in particular, the budgets were probably something that were kept at a higher level, but over the last couple of years we've really focused on feeding them down to the team managers so that day to day they've got something to work towards as well.
And would the team managers have input into the creation of those budgets?
Yeah, certainly. When we're setting the budgets, we start with our team managers and shift managers having conversations about at what rate they think they can do things. And once they've sort of settled on that, then it comes up to the operations manager and DCM level, and we'll discuss that, and we'll perhaps let them know that maybe they could have had a bit of a higher number, and we'll give it a little bump up. And then we go up to Josh and he gives us another bump up again. But yeah, it is a collective decision, because what we don't want is a budget that people haven't signed up for. So once we get to the final budget number, when it comes down, we've got the buy-in from the team. We're not giving them a number that they haven't agreed that they can achieve. It's really important. Otherwise, they're not bought into that number.
And Josh, from your perspective, the creation of budgets, how important is the process to that?
Yeah, it's really critical that we've built a budget from the ground up. So I get a top-down budget, we call it, right? So it comes down centrally saying, Josh, you've got X amount of money to spend for the year, and then all the sites will build their bottom budgets up from the bottom, and those two numbers have to obviously equal, and normally round one they never do, right? There's always a bit of a gap. But understanding the build process allows us to go, right, what do we need to change to be able to get that number to match? Or where do I think there's probably a little bit of padding in there, right, intentionally or not intentionally, so that we can go through and do that. So the process of both, the top-down approach is very blunt, I guess. It's, here's what you spent last year, here are the cost impacts that we see at a macro level, whether that be our EBAs, inflationary pressures, that includes a lot of our non-payroll type things. Electricity cost increases. This site would obviously use a lot of electricity. All those budgets are built up, but then in our controllable stuff on this site, we had superannuation, work cover premium changes, all those type of things we've got to build together. And then I'll know which sites to put the real work into building it bottom up, which allows me to kind of tick through really quickly, and then go back on the other ones and push a little bit harder. So the build process is more important for me than the end number. Hopefully we end up in a space where we don't have a gap, right? And we can crack on. So.
No, that's a really interesting insight into how you put a budget together and the process involved. So thank you both, Josh and Mick, for your insights today about budgets. That's really, really informative. Thank you.